Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, your host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, speaking that you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. As always, if you want to touch base with me during one of my shows, the best way is via Twitter at DRVIBESHOW. You can also catch a number of my shows at thegoodmenproject.com, where I am the host of the monthly Good Men Project show, and I co-produce it with Marie Roker Jones. I'm also co-host with Marie Roker Jones on a Google Hangout called Man You Wanna Be, and also you can catch selected shows of what I do at the Black Life Coaches Network, the #1 resource for Black life coaches in the world. Another special guest we have on the line or via Google Hangout tonight, and it is Jamaal A. Bowman. Well, who is he? He's a husband, father of 3, and founding principal of Cornerstone Academy for Social Action Middle School. Jamaal received his bachelor's degree in business from the University of New Haven in May 1999 and immediately began his teaching career at PS90 in the South Bronx. After spending 5 years at PS90, Jamaal moved on to serve as the Dean of Students at the High School for Arts and Technology. In 2008, Jamaal was accepted into the New Leaders for New Schools. Congratulations. And spent the year writing the proposal for CASA while interning at Achievement First Endeavor Charter School. He is a certified business teacher, guidance counselor, and school building leader, and has used all of his professional and personal and professional experience to build the vision, mission, tone, and foundation of Cornerstone. CASA is now in its 6th year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Has been celebrated for its exemplary school culture, high student achievement, and innovative student-centered practices. Its students consistently attend some of the top high schools in New York City, including Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Latin, and are offered accelerated coursework in algebra. Hey, they need to teach me. I was never good at algebra, living environment, and English. Algebra, I stopped taking that after grade 9. Jamaal was born and raised in East Harlem, Yorkville section of New York City, and is a descendant of Public Enemy, KRS-One, and Rakim, thread of hip-hop culture. We may get to that tonight. And as an avid sports fan, vivacious reader, and believes that deep design, thinking, creativity, and collaboration will change the world. Welcome to our show, Jamaal A. Bowman. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you know what? As always, I'm blessed and highly favored. Magnet for miracles, solution for someone's problem. I thank you for responding back to me, reaching out to you. So I don't take that for granted, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
My man, let's get some background. Growing up in East Harlem, what was that like? What was that like about, my man?
It was a lot of fun, actually. It's funny. I spent most of my years in East Harlem, I guess up until the age of 7. You know, I grew up in a single-parent household, so while my mom worked, I stayed with my grandmother in East River Projects on 103rd Street and 1st Avenue. And unfortunately, when I was 7, my grandmother passed away, so I moved to live with my mother full-time on 92nd Street and 2nd Avenue. It's interesting because in East Harlem, East River Projects, it was a, I would say, public assistance community, so it wasn't a working class community. So in the projects, obviously, it's a different culture, different environment, different schools, and it was very interesting moving to 92nd and 2nd because you immediately saw the contrast. It was a working class environment. The schools had higher expectations, better resources, and it's just different waking up every day and watching people get up and go to work as opposed to waking up every day and watching people just kind of hang out on the block. So I got a chance to kind of see and understand that contrast very early. But it was fun, man. I mean, New York City, the Big Apple is the place to be. So got a chance to walk around, run around, you know, go into some museums, hang out in Central Park, see Park Avenue, you know, and all those things. So it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
Excellent. What did your grandmother instill and leave nuggets wise in you? And you know, my condolences on her passing away, but I'm sure she was a very much a positive influence on your life. Can you share a little about her?
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother, my mother, my sisters. I'm an only boy, so obviously very spoiled. But just
and you enjoyed that, I hope.
oh, absolutely. I took advantage of it. But
Nice.
just the principles of family and the principles of love and just understanding early on how much love provides a stability to a young child growing up. Just the idea of you can be anything you want to be and do anything you want to do was instilled in me very early on. So love, to some people is this abstract, sort of weird conceptual thing, but obviously for a kid growing up, it's something you feel very, very holy and it's very real. So that concept of love just gave me a sense of stability and a sense of confidence as I entered out into the world.
Okay, I'm going to ask a very quick favor of you. Can you just
Yes.
lower your camera just a little bit?
Okay.
They, yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. Perfect. Because
Okay.
I want people to see your beautiful chin, you know? There you go. I'm watching the that. I find it very interesting, a number of situations, or not situations, but your environment. No father,
Mhm.
raised by mother and grandmother,
Mhm.
only boy.
Yeah.
How did you? It sounded like you enjoyed that, but some people may feel that that's a challenging situation. You have no male figure at a young age, and I know this corresponds a little bit more to what we'll get onto conversation-wise. But
Mhm.
how did you receive empowerment being a young black man growing up with, at least in the immediate environment, no black male father figure or role model?
Well, it's interesting because my mother was tough, man, and my grandmother was tough. So they were both tough women, and they grew up, pretty rough. So they had that edge about them. So they make sure to create the boundaries that I needed, so I wouldn't get too out of hand, as I was growing up. I had friends who sold drugs. I never got into any of that. I kind of knew where to draw the line, a bit because my mother, and grandmother established those boundaries. But I also had two older sisters. So my older sisters are about 10 years older than me. So my mother had some practice in dealing with them, and my sisters kind of running her ragged a little bit. So by the time she got to me, she was wise and skilled, based on the experiences with my sisters. But I also want to say this. I mean, my sisters dated, obviously, and the men they dated, some may see them as, bad influences and gangsters, if you will, but they served as role models for me, growing up, because they were, it was a different time in New York then. We're talking about, early to mid 80s, and it was the beginning of hip hop culture. And at that time, it was all about knowledge of self, and it was about peace, love, and unity. So these men that my sister dated kind of brought those values into my home as well, and that definitely impacted me. Let me also say that my father wasn't completely absent.
Right.
So that's important as well because he was around. He came around periodically, and I did get a chance to spend time with him. He wasn't in the immediate family as much as I would have liked him to be, and he stood me up a few times, and that was heartbreaking. But he was around, so it's
Yeah.
different than some children who have been completely abandoned by a parent that they've never met or seen before. So I just wanted to clarify that really
No
quickly.
problem. I appreciate that, and this is your show. I'm just steering the ship. So much appreciate the clarification. You said that you were raised in a good environment. Where did you get the knowledge or the desire to follow the educational path that you did?
Right after college, I guess. Once I graduated from college, so like you mentioned, I went to school for business. So after coming out of school, I kind of pursued career opportunities in the business realm, and it
Why
was
business? Why
uh,
business?
it was, I was never a kid who had much of a plan. I was very sort of adaptive and kind of rolled with the punches. So I literally like got a pamphlet that, encouraged us to study business and sports management in particular. I played college football as well. So sports management, business, college football, it kind of made sense. So out of college, I went to pursue career or work in that field, and it just seemed to be a social disconnect between that realm and who I was at the time. So I had friends who were teachers, and I had friends who were teachers and their parents who were in education as well. So they suggested education, And you know, as soon as I went down to get fingerprinted and fill out the application, it just seemed like a perfect fit. You know, as you know, I think God puts us where we need to be at the time where we need to be there, and I felt that, you know, it was a perfect fit for me to go into education at that time.
Well, it's ironic, and I was going to bring it up later on in our conversation. I'll bring it up now. Like my father was a teacher in the same public school in the same classroom for 32 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I can certainly relate to your pursuit of education and the rewarding benefits that it brought. Was it difficult for you going to teachers college and getting your degree? Was it a challenging time for you to get that at all?
I'm sorry, you said teachers college?
Well, you got into teaching. How did you get into it? Because you said you filled out the
Oh,
how
no,
was it an
no.
easy journey for you?
Oh, no, no, no. I didn't go to teachers college. So at that time, all you needed was a bachelor's degree to become a teacher. So
Right.
because I had my bachelor's in business, I was eligible to apply to be a teacher. So it wasn't difficult at all. I mean, I was hired at PS90, which is in one of the poorest school districts in the country. It was a K to 4 school, 1,500 kids, and a huge African and Latino immigrant population. So it's a very challenging district and very challenging school. So in schools like that, you know, unfortunately, you could roll out of bed and get hired. So it wasn't really, well, seriously, at that time, that's how it was. And it still is that way in certain parts of the country. But so it wasn't hard to get hired at that time. So I was fortunate to get in and get the ball rolling.
Let me ask then. So when you heard the news, like that you were going to start at that school, what was your first reaction?
I was excited. I mean, I'm just, I don't know. I'm the kind of person where when challenges present themselves, they excite me because I just see it as like a clean slate, or you know, something that we can mold into something great. So because of the struggles of the school and the struggles of the community, I just felt we had a golden opportunity to like make something great happen in this particular environment. So I was actually really excited to get started and meet my colleagues and do what we needed to do.
Excellent. Do you remember your first day?
Do I remember my first day? I don't. I remember my second day. My first
Okay.
day.
I'll take anything I can get.
Well,
Okay.
well, you know, they put me in the classroom. They didn't give me any resources whatsoever. No curriculum, no books. Didn't tell me what to teach. Didn't tell me the standards. I was a K to 4 math teacher, and you know, they just pretty much said go in there and teach. And the second day, I remember the second day because one of my boys, you know, Osmond Wilson, shout out to Ozzy. He's in Texas now. But one of my boys like came on board the second day, and the principal literally said, "Follow Bowman and do what he does." And so I was actually a mentor my second day on the job, and
Wow.
and and it was just crazy. I mean, the principal there was actually principal of two other schools as well, so it was just chaos, man. But I want to say that being kind of thrown to the lions in that situation kind of forced me to sink or swim. So it forced me to be collaborative with colleagues. It forced me to ask questions. It forced me to look for the standards and go to workshops and learn. It forced me to be a learner. And I think that's something that schools try to implement now that sometimes funny teachers are resistant to, but it's something that's necessary. Teachers have to have that sort of wherewithal and that sort of grit in their work, particularly in the challenging communities.
You were there for 5 years. Can you share some of the wonderful experiences you had?
Yeah, so you know, like I said, there was a lot of apathy and despair at that time, and I just love the camaraderie that I was able to build with some of the other newer teachers who were there during that time. These are teachers that I'm still friends with today. Teachers that you know we went out every Friday and enjoyed happy hour and just you know shot the breeze. I mean, that was great. We started a basketball program, you know, just to give kids something to do after school and get them competing against other schools and building just culture around teamwork and sportsmanship and all those things. And we started a soccer team as well, which was very well received. We collaborated with the Boys and Girls Club right up the street. and did some back to school events with them. So yeah, there were a lot of great times. I mean, even when I left after the 5th year, I didn't want to leave, but my license changed and I had to move on to high school. But definitely more highs than lows, in my opinion.
What was the community like when you started there, and then what was it like when you left? Was there any change? Like obviously, it sounded like it was a great time. Were there noticeable changes you saw in that community from the time you got there till the time you had to leave?
So there was more of a relationship and connection with the Boys and Girls Club up the street than it was when we first got there.
Right.
The teachers that started with me, we kind of built that relationship and made those connections, and they were sustained even after we left. But that community in particular, it was just a lot of challenges around there. High crime rate, low economic status, low literacy rate. A lot of challenges there that they're still, even today, are trying to overcome. The school has since been restructured, so now instead of one large school, there are two smaller schools in there, two administrations. So they're doing better, and they're definitely on the upswing. But it's still a lot. I mean, when you're talking that many kids, immigrant population, it can be tough.
Yeah, I can understand. Was it hard for you to leave?
It was, like I said, I wanted to stay, but my license changed from teacher to guidance counselor, and they already had one. So, I was on to high school, and that was very exciting as well because I anticipated high school being, I always felt that the kids and the social struggles that they had in elementary school, by the time they got out of high school, they would grow out of them. And what I learned is kids don't grow out of things unless there's intervention at some point. So when I got to MLK High School for Arts and Technology, you could still see the social difficulties, the interpersonal difficulties that the students never grew out of them. They actually got worse for a lot of students because at that age now we're talking about gangs, affiliation, and the peer pressure and things that older kids do that elementary kids do not do. So there were different challenges there.
Right. So how long were you involved in the guidance end at that school?
I was there for 3 years as a guidance counselor, dean, coach, and club facilitator and teacher.
Wow. Good
Yeah,
experience?
great. Yeah, great experience. Again, the contrast and just getting that the younger kid experience as well as the high school kid experience. Again, this all was part of my framing my mindset, if you will, for the work and for our communities, and kind of influences the way I think about everything today.
Excellent. Where did the thought process and idea come for the Cornerstone Academy for Social Action?
Yeah, so so after being at King for 2 years, I decided that I wanted to pursue the school building leadership certification, and new leaders for new schools based on my research was the best program to help prepare me uh, for that position. I was a resident with new leaders for a year, and about midway through the residency, they gave us the opportunity or the option to write a school proposal for a new school. We had Mayor Bloomberg at the time, and he was looking to open up new middle schools in our most needy areas. So I took the opportunity to write the proposal and put my ideas on paper. The original name of the school was Life Academy. Life was an acronym. It stood for Leadership Inspires Freedom and Excellence. So that school, that proposal was rooted in writing across the curriculum, rooted in cultural awareness and cultural competency, rooted in expeditionary learning and experiential learning. But we couldn't. It's funny, we couldn't use the name Life because there was already a school for pregnant teens named Life Academy. So Cornerstone was already in place. Dr. Melissa Mutu opened up the Cornerstone Academy Elementary School, and she wanted it to be K-8, but she decided to keep it at K-5. So when I wrote the proposal, there was so much alignment there. They allowed me to take the name and open up our school.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Good stuff. So what is CASA all about?
It's about love, man. You know, going full circle back to, my grandmother and my mom. Man. It's about loving the kids. It's about loving the community. It's about upliftment. It's about empowerment. It's about intellectual rigor, but also social and emotional intelligence as well. So we really, we go at the whole child and we offer a curriculum that's holistic. We don't just give them reading, writing, and math all day. They get the sciences, they get humanities, and they get technology and arts and all those things. But at the foundation of it all, it's about love. I mean, Cornel West has been screaming from the mountaintops lately of, we just need to infuse a powerful love movement into our communities, and I know what he's saying. Again, we got to love our kids, man, and be there for them every step of the way. So first and foremost, it begins with that, and then everything kind of comes from that.
Excellent. Well, I wanted our audience to get a little bit of background about yourself and the CASA and some of your journey, but we want to now just spend the rest of our conversation, if it's good with you, to talk about empowering poor communities of color. Why did you want to talk about this, share about this subject tonight?
Yeah, I just think, the history of our people in this country is well documented. The history of what's been done to our people, whether it's U.S. government, U.S. businesses, police, in terms of murdering our people and the brutality, some of the things associated with that, that's well documented, and the data is there. But now I just want to shift the conversation. I want to continue to have that conversation and use that as momentum, but shift the conversation towards, okay, what can we do for ourselves to empower our community and gain the respect of the world beyond our community? So what do we need to do? What
Well,
steps can we take?
so let me ask then, what do you feel where the Black or African American community is not doing?
What do I feel we're not doing? So I don't want to say we're not doing it because I
Not
think there's,
doing.
yeah,
Let me
I know
rephrase
what
it.
you mean.
Not, not,
Yeah,
not, not doing to the fullest. Let's put
yeah.
it that.
Yeah, so I feel we're doing a lot of good things, and I feel it's a lot of good being done in pockets, but I still feel that we're disjointed and disconnected, and there's a lack of unity in terms of being very strategic with what we need to do. So I've been in education now for 15 years. So there have been no Black and Latino history curriculum implemented in our schools for our kids.
Right.
Throughout my career, I have not seen that done. And this is critical because our kids need knowledge of self. They need knowledge of their history. They need knowledge of their culture before they came to this country. They need to know of their ancestors who were kings and who were queens and the spiritual systems and programs that were in place in Africa even before we came here. Our kids don't know a lot about their history. And when you know your history, that right there gives you a sense of almost spiritual empowerment and upliftment. It helps you to feel confident as you move through society. So I see a lack of a curriculum that really addresses the spiritual and cultural competency that's necessary for our kids. So that's one aspect that I think we need to improve upon as well. Another aspect we need to improve upon is this idea of policing our own communities. So right now there's a huge disconnect between police departments and our communities, and that disconnect isn't going to go away anytime soon, especially based on what's going on in Ferguson. We need to police our own communities, and we need to protect each other from those in our communities who are trying to hurt us, whether it's people from right next door or people from down the block. We need to police and protect our own communities. We also need to support the most needy in our community. So the idea of single parenthood, the idea of children growing up. We know about the language gap. We know about the executive function gap through Paul Tuff's work in his amazing book, How Children Succeed. So we need to collaborate, I think, with medical institutions, schools, political institutions, and businesses all working together to address the needs of the most at risk in our community. So I think it's a unity conversation, and it's also being very strategic with getting at the cultural and spiritual aspects of our needs. And when I say spiritual, I don't only mean religious. I mean spiritual in terms of confidence, in terms of empowerment, in terms of upliftment through the consciousness of what we're learning about ourselves.
I'm gonna like peel apart some of the things that you've just shared with us and get you to drill down a little deeper. One of the areas you mentioned was the unity. What is causing, in your opinion, the lack of unity or better unity in the African
Mhm.
American community? What are some of the factors that are causing that?
I don't know. I think what I've seen, and I'm going to speak from the perspective of education.
Right?
We 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 in education seem to be overwhelmed with the struggles and the stresses of what's in front of us. So the child in front of us who can't read, the child in front of us who has the behavioral issues, the parent who is confrontational towards the teachers in the school, the system that is bombarding us with testing and new initiatives and new curriculums. It seems like we're overwhelmed with all these different aspects that are going on. And sometimes we forget to just pick up the phone and call a colleague and say, hey, what's going on with you? How are you working on this particular problem? So from an education perspective, I noticed that we just don't reach out to each other as much as we need to. We don't meet as a collective as much as I think we need to, and it's because we're, I think, also waiting for the local government or the state government or the federal government to tell us the next steps for what we need to do for our kids, whereas we need to sit back and reflect and discuss the needs of our community and then organize and mobilize toward making sure that those governments give us what we need for our kids. So it's a sense of being overwhelmed and almost like, pulled in many different directions where we don't get to connect with each other as much as we should.
Understood. Understood. Do you feel, and I had a conversation last night, a roundtable last night with a group of black men in regards to Ferguson aftermath, the grand jury decision, and one of the points that a lot of them raised were that we need to go back to some aspects of old school when it
Hmm.
comes to communities. What are your thoughts about that?
What did they mean by old school? How did they define old school?
What did they were saying is that we've got to, like, for example, some of them were saying when we're not watching each other's backs enough, like when if one of them did something wrong and if their parents are around, a member of the community would make sure that they were watching out and sort of say, that's not right. you know
Of
we're,
of
are,
course.
we're maybe not enough of our brother's keeper as much as we were in the past.
Of course, I agree with that, and I also want to say I think there's a disconnect between our elders and our youth. I think that disconnect has really hurt us as well, which I'm talking about the civil rights generation and the hip hop generation. I think there's been a huge disconnect in that regard, as was telling when you look at the recent beef between Jay-Z and Harry Belafonte, right? I mean that right there was a great illustration of that disconnect, and I think because of that disconnect, the hip hop generation, for lack of a better term, and the youth have had to sort of redefine their reality as they go. And the pillars that were left by the civil rights movement were not passed down to the youth. But I think that goes back to the conversation around cultural competency and the proper curriculum. Because if the proper curriculum is in place, those pillars can be passed down to the children in the school system. If it's not, all they're doing is relearning about how the Europeans conquered you and you were a slave and you have no history to speak of. That's incorrect. And I think parents need to organize and mobilize against the curriculum that's being taught to the schools so that some of those pillars can be passed down and we're not starting from scratch every generation.
What do you think does this cause for this disconnect between the civil rights generation and the hip hop generation? You grew up with it, and you're an educator, and you're probably, and I'm being kind here, so don't get mad at me. You're an age where you can probably relate to both.
Hmm.
And I'm sure you have a number of conversations with both sides of those both generations. What
Hmm.
do you hear them saying about each other when you're in
Yeah.
conversations?
Well, I hang out. I like hanging out with elders. You know what I mean? I have, Mr. Brother Kevin Allen. I don't know if he's listening now, but Brother Allen, he's a counselor that works in my school. He's 60. And I just always appreciated hanging out with elders. You know, maybe it's because my father wasn't around, so the elder males kind of gave me the wisdom that I didn't really get as much as a child. I don't hear them when I was a kid. When I was a kid, or even now, I don't really hear the youth much bad mouthing their fathers or bad mouthing elders. But what we have seen is the fathers not being in the home. So for whatever reason, the fathers aren't in the home. I've heard economic reasons for it in terms of, the mother getting more public assistance when she's a single mom as opposed to being with a man. I've heard that. I've heard, jobs being lost in communities of color, industrialization jobs being lost, and many fathers, not being able to support families leaving. But then, I look at, how black men and the black community in general continues to be overwhelmed by just what's happening in our society. I mean, we went from slavery to Jim Crow to redlining to heroin to crack cocaine. I mean, it's been an overwhelming sort of attack from the outside on what's happening in our community, and is broken up the family. So if the fathers aren't around, for whatever the reason is, those lessons aren't going to be passed down to the children, and that's why I continue to see the disconnect.
You have mentioned the education system, and you've been a part of it for 15 years.
Hmm.
What changes need to happen? Oh, well, well, I'll put that to the side for a minute. Are African communities putting enough pressure or using enough drive to change the education system? Obviously, it isn't. Why do you feel they're not pushing enough? Because education is so important, not only in family and community, just in general society. Is there a lack of push by a number of black parents to make the education system beneficial for their children, in your opinion?
Yes, I think so. I think our parents, their goal was to just survive. So, it was right around the civil rights movement. My mom was coming up, and she was alive when Malcolm was killed. She was alive when Martin was killed. She was alive during that time. They tried to recruit her to be a Black Panther, um,
Wow.
and and all
Wow.
sh- and all she wanted to do was get a job and take care of her children as best as she knew how.
Right.
So again, she's a single mom. So all that other stuff, where in some other communities you may have the man working and the mom at home, very involved in the school, very involved in the PTA, all those things that happen in the upper middle class communities and other communities don't happen or haven't happened in our communities enough. So I think that's a big piece. My mom was just trying to survive.
Right.
It's my job to thrive, right? So it's my job to not only survive, but to thrive. And it's my job and my generation's job to organize to make sure our schools provide what they need to provide to our children. So when you ask what needs to be done, I think that was a great question. We can answer it right now. We need more people of color in our schools. We need more black men in our schools. I'm in a district with 50 schools, 49 schools. I'm the only black male principal in the district. Uh,
Wow.
that's
Wow.
that's insane. And this is a district that serves mostly people of color, poor people of color at that. So that's a big issue. And when you look at an organization like Teach for America, for example, where they've been around 20, 25 years, and they continue to be funded out the wazoo for the quote unquote great work they're doing. I mean, man, in the beginning, they didn't really recruit black men heavily like that. And their teachers come and go after 2 or 3 years. They're gone. Some stay, and some do good work in education when they stay. But an organization like that has a $500 million operating budget, and there's no real initiatives for black men, black and Latino men, and black and Latino men continue to lag behind everybody else. So it's we need more people of color in schools. We need more black men in schools. I think is part of it. In addition to curriculum, in addition to entrepreneurship opportunities in our communities. We need our own businesses. We need our money to come through our own businesses and stay in our communities. And that's how you build community through building our economies.
The only principal in your district of color.
Oh, the only black male principal. There's
Only
a
one.
there's a Latino brother.
Yep.
There's like one Latino brother. No, two, maybe two. The only black male principal in the district. That,
So,
yeah.
so let me ask you, you're very passionate about having more black male teachers in the education system. Is it, and I'm going to use my example here a little bit because I tried to apply where I am. I'm in Toronto, but it wasn't easy. And the funny thing is, I applied a number of times, didn't get in, supposedly had the marks and the credentials. And the funny thing is, that was a number of years ago when I had hair that I applied. But I still hear the same cry or the same statements. We need more black men in the schools. Is it a lack of black men applying? Is it a lack of the education system making it, how can I say, attractive? And I'm using that word loosely, to get more black male teachers. Why isn't it happening in your opinion?
Yeah, it's all of the above. I think there are not enough black men applying. There's not a strategic recruitment of black men. It's funny growing up. I mean, let's use the example of the sensationalization of the media. When I was growing up, everybody wanted to be Michael Jordan or KRS-One, right? You either had to be a great basketball player or a rapper to make it out the hood. Like that was the theory, that was the ideology, that was the mindset, and that was wrong. And again, father's not around to really tell you what's right. There's not a strategic push in the communities to really educate you and tell you what's right. So we lost a lot of black men trying to be the next Michael Jordan or trying to be the next rapper, or again, when I was growing up, trying to be Al Pacino from Scarface, trying to be the top drug dealer. We lost a lot of black men to that. And now, in a lot of cases, we're repeating those cycles. But that's the point about empowerment, right? We can't allow those cycles to be repeated. We got to organize, we got to unite, and we got to be strategic. And if we do that at a high level with the proper numbers, we'll have what we need in our community.
Good stuff. Need you to move your
Oh,
camera
sorry,
down just a little bit.
my bad.
That's okay. No problem. No problem, Teach. That's good stuff. It, so do you get involved personally in trying to get more black men involved in the classroom?
Well, I'm about to. I'm
Okay.
about to get a lot more involved. As a new school, you got to make sure that the school doesn't burn itself to the ground. You got to make sure it's
Right.
running at an optimal level. So that's what I've been doing over the first 5 years. But I'm about to, reach out of my school building and collaborate with other principals. As a matter of fact, after the non-indictment came down last week, not only did my school do a semi-protest and march around the community, uh, voicing our concern, I also reached out to some cool school principals to ask them if they wanted to continue the conversation and figure out a way to leverage our collective power as principals to begin the conversation in our community about what's right and wrong, and to really empower our students from it through a different lens. So I have about 7 or 8 principals on board so far, and we're going to meet sometime in the next couple of weeks to begin to strategize around some of these education initiatives. In addition to that, I mean, I have about 30 staff members at my school, and about a third of them are black males, are men of color. So the men of color that I met throughout my career, thankfully were blessed me enough to come and join me at my school. So, I try to put my money where my mouth is with that.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on taking that initiative, and we're speaking it that's going to be successful, and it's going to be a great movement to not only in your neck of the woods, but just it'll spread right around all around America.
Absolutely.
You love the word empowerment. So I'd like you to provide your definition of empowerment. What does that mean? What does that mean? Because that's one of your core words. So what does that mean to you?
It means no excuses. It means stepping up. It means each individual has the power to transform their world if they're focused, if they're disciplined, if they're hardworking. You don't have to wait for a handout. You don't have to make excuses. You don't have to spend most of your time complaining and asking why does this happen or why does that happen and asking a bunch of what ifs and shoulda, woulda, coulda. We need to just get out of that mindset and get out of that frame of mind. We need to get out of the fixed mindset and move more into the growth mindset. And growth is about growing our people, growing ourselves first, growing ourselves, uniting with others who are also growing our people, growing our families, growing our communities. So it's just about, again, the problems are well documented. And life is gonna kick you in the behind every day, multiple times. That's just how life is. But every curveball is a learning experience. Every valley is a learning experience. We need to learn and be inspired by the trials and tribulations of life, and use that energy, use that anger, use that depression, use that frustration, harness that energy, and then channel it towards bettering ourselves. Whether it's reading a book, whether it's joining a book club, having a conversation, watching a documentary, asking, how might we questions as opposed to the why questions. Sometimes we get stuck in the why and never move to the how. And the how begins with the how might I statements. How might I transform this aspect of my life? And once we start talking like that and change the language, you change the mindset. Once you change the mindset, you change the behavior. Next thing you know, you're transforming your community. So for me, it's all about, let's be strong. It's about fortitude. Let's be strong. Let's fortify collectively, and let's get done what we need to get done.
Good stuff. In the subject of our conversation is empowering communities of color. What is the state of the communities that you're talking about and wanting to empower at this present time? Give us a little window on these communities of color that need the empowerment. What's going on in them? Because a lot of times we'll just see clips in the news, but you're working in them.
Yeah.
You're dealing with them every day of the school year and probably every day outside of the school year in some indirect way. Give us a Jamaal view of what's going on in these communities that need empowerment.
So what we see in America, graduation rates have increased, but black and brown boys continue to graduate at a much lower rate than everybody else. We see college graduation rates increasing, but black and brown boys continue to graduate at a lower rate than everybody else. When we talk about managerial and CEO positions, black and brown men hold these positions much less than anybody else. When we talk about entrepreneurship and starting our own businesses, poor people of color lag behind everybody else in these areas. When we talk about third grade test scores, fourth grade test scores, and again, I'm not big on test scores, but when you have black and brown boys continue to lag way behind. I mean, Asians, in the Asian community, English isn't even their first language, and they're doing better than everyone, right? But black and brown boys, third grade test scores, fourth grade test scores continue to lag behind everybody else. And third grade test scores are predictive of eighth grade test scores, which impact high school graduation rates, so on and so forth, right? So we see a language gap in poor communities of color. We see an executive function gap in poor communities of color. So when I'm talking about executive functions, I'm talking about critical thinking ability. I'm talking about impulse control. I'm talking about sort of the air traffic controllers of the cognitive functions in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Like, this is essential. Poverty and the trauma associated with poverty, which disproportionately affects black and brown boys, greatly impact executive functions. So kids are entering school way behind. And because they have teachers with the least amount of experience and the least trained and least qualified, they continue to stay behind. And because, again, communities are disconnected and overwhelmed with just trying to survive and trying to make it, parents aren't able to mobilize like they need to demand that their schools are providing what the kids need. So parents need support in the home with the parenting piece, and that's at conception. Parents need support. They need to be identified as at risk at conception. And Dr. Nadine Burke Harris out in California is doing great work around that. But parents need support in the home. We need daycares in the communities that close the language gap and close the executive function gap. And then we need school curriculums rooted in literacy, rooted in cultural competency that make sure our kids are on track to do what they need to do as adults. So I just see a snowball effect or domino effect beginning at conception that continues all the way throughout.
And I really appreciate you sharing with that. And because what I read and see is this gap of empowerment is only widening.
Yes.
What is your biggest or some of your big concerns as this gap widens? What could be at risk here? What are the possible bad effects or not so good effects as this gap widens, not just for immediate communities, but America as a whole?
Yeah, because in America as a whole, I mean, you talk about the wealth gap. I mean, the 1% are getting wealthier, and everybody else is just scratching, fighting, and killing each other for the remaining wealth that trickles down from the wealth 1%. So America has a huge economic problem and a huge financial problem and a huge social problem. In terms of poor communities of color, I mean, unfortunately, we've always been at the bottom of those problems, right? What's the statement? America catches a cold and the black community catches pneumonia, right? So that's kind of how that works. So for me, the worst case scenario, I honestly don't even think about. I always think about what's the best case scenario.
Okay.
And from what I see happening with Ferguson, I'm unfortunately it was a tragedy and heartbreaking, and my thoughts and prayers go out to the family. But with that, I feel almost inspired and empowered by what's happening not only in Ferguson but around the country and around the world. Shows like your show, there are other podcasts and other people speaking out. Social media has given us an opportunity to connect with each other in a way that we were never able to do before. And I think if we figure out how to leverage it correctly and unite and organize around it and in our communities, we can really transform and turn this ship around. So I see us, I see us on the upswing. I see me as having a voice, you as having a voice, and those principles that I'm going to be coming together with, and I just feel like the tide is turning. The tide is turning in a positive way, and I think if we could be really strategic in the next 10 to 25 years, I mean, if you think about the '60s, think about everything that happened in the '60s in America that transformed America forever. From the Civil Rights Act to the Voters' Rights Act. I mean, yes, there were martyrs, and I would hope the next movement doesn't have any martyrs. But if we can really be strategic for the next 10 to 15 years, I think we could really, we could continue King's dream of a radical redistribution of political and economic power. I mean, that's what King was beginning to work on. I think if we can pick up where he left off, collectively, they might be able to kill one of us, but they can't kill all of us. And I just think we have more leaders collectively than maybe we had before. And I just think there's a lot of possibility, and we just got to keep this momentum going that I'm feeling right now.
You mentioned the next 10 to 25 years, and how critical do you feel the next 25 years is for the future of Black America?
It's essential, but forget the next 5, the next, the next 1 to 5, are critical because, again, there's momentum right now. I mean, Ferguson has created momentum, and social media has connected us, and we've learned so much, and so. Before we even get to the next 25 or the next 5, let's look at tomorrow. I mean, what are we going to say and do tomorrow that's different than what we did today, that will empower us individually and empower the people around us. How do we change the language and change the conversation, change our behavior tomorrow toward this empowerment? Because we have to. It's a day-to-day focus and struggle.
Okay. You had mentioned during our conversation tonight, it's also part of your bio about hip hop.
Yes.
What effect, good, bad, or neutral, does hip hop have or could have in regards to empowerment of people or poor communities of color?
Yeah, so hip hop, especially mainstream stream hip hop, is very different now than it was when I was a kid. When I was growing up, hip hop was all new, so it all was mainstream. So when Public Enemy had the song "Fight the Power," or when KRS One had the song "The Homeless," or X Clan, or Brand Nubian, or Eric B and Rakim, I mean, again, these brothers were talking about upliftment, empowerment, consciousness, social consciousness, intelligence. I mean, Karis One called himself the teacher. In the song My Philosophy, he said, I produce, create, innovate on a higher level. I mean, he's using language then that Google and Facebook and Twitter are using now, talking about innovation. So that was a different time. Now, I mean, one of the biggest records is Bobby Smurda's record. Hot N word is the song, and you watch the video, and he's getting high, and they're drinking, and whatever's in the cup, and all he's talking about is having sex with women, and multiple partners, and he's pointing a fake gun at the camera, shooting at the gun like I'll kill you. So it's like a lot of mainstream hip hop now is about get high, get drunk, have multiple sex partners. I'll kill you and your family if you mess with me. And again, it's a self-destructive mentality, and we glorify it. I mean, we had a party, a Halloween party, and the DJ, I didn't realize played that song. My kids went bananas. They went crazy. They danced and they were singing the lyrics, and it was just crazy. So, we have an assembly every Friday called Community Circle, and I use it as a teaching moment. So, I went home that night. I watched the Bobby Smurda video multiple times, and I used it to like have conversations with my students, because there was you know all my hip hop wasn't kosher, growing up. I mean, some of it was, it was what it was, but I just want to help my students separate from, okay, this is party music and you might dance to it in a party, but let's be conscious of the content and the lyrics, and let's not try to emulate and mimic that behavior in our real lives. It's entertainment for you to dance to, not a lifestyle for you to live. So that became a conversation. So that's what I try to do with some of the newer hip hop. Like, let's analyze this together and be conscious of what it is, so that we can be clear, like, okay, I may dance to it, but I don't want to live like that. And then I also incorporate a lot of old school hip hop into our community circle. Nas has a great song, I Know I Can Be What I Want to Be. It's a great song. Self Destruction by Karis One and other artists is another great song. Fight the Power, Public Enemy. So our kids, and that's the great thing about hip hop, it connects generations. So our kids love when I play the old school stuff, because it has the same feel to it. And a lot of their parents are my age, so I know they heard some of it from their parents. I mean, Tupac's Brenda's Got a Baby. I mean, we've done lessons around that. Tupac, Keep Your Head Up. Lessons around that. So, we use it as instructional tools as much as we can.
That is good stuff. So with today's hip hop, good, bad, neutral influence on empowerment for people of color.
I don't know enough about it to answer that question, but if Bobby Smurda is any indication, it's bad.
Hey.
If Bobby Smurda is, well, let me say this, and again, I try to, I don't want to be that old guy that just, trounces on, the music of the youth. Let me say this about Bobby Smurda. He he recorded his own video. He wrote a song, made his own video, got 29 million hits on YouTube, got invited to the BET Awards to perform, got a record deal. So the entrepreneurial spirit associated with that, I'm all for that because our communities need entrepreneurs. Having said that, the content, I know how that content can influence an 11, 12, and 13-year-old mind. So I'm worried about that, especially when they already don't have self-confidence because they maybe can't read too good, or they can't, or there's abuse in the household, or whatever it is. So, if they come in already fragile, from trauma associated with academics or family life, then they're more apt to be influenced by the Bobby Smurdas of the world. So again, it's not just the hip hop; it's a strategic approach from conception in at-risk communities.
Excellent. My man, we're winding down and we just got started. My goodness. It's been a great time. Do you have, well, first of all, we have to thank you for sharing with us tonight on all different subjects and just being so transparent and open. Do you have any closing thoughts in regards to empowering poor communities of color? What is your vision? What needs to happen?
I think we need to learn. I think we need to love, learn, and grow together. If we continue to do that, love, learn, and grow together, I think we'll be okay. And that love is what it is. Love thy neighbor. Let's not hate on each other. Let's not put each other down. Let's uplift each other through love. Let's learn. Let's be vivacious. Let's be obsessive. Let's be relentless in our search for knowledge and our search for wisdom and learn, man. Read books. Read everything. Read, discuss, think, interact. Just learn, and do it together. Do it together. Do it with your neighbors. Do it with your friends. Do it with your enemies. Have no enemies. Just love and learn together, and then we'll create what we need to create.
Excellent. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can tweet at me. I'm at JamaalABowman.com. Excuse me, at Jamaal A. Bowman. That's JamaalBowman. Let me give you that again. That's JamaalABowman. You can also find me on Facebook. Just search for Jamaal Bowman, school principal, and you can find me there as well.
Excellent. We have really enjoyed this conversation tonight. And just before we let Jamaal go, a number of people got to thank who did some tweeting about this tonight, either before the event or during the event. Spaces for Change, Nicole Franklin, big shout out to at Ricky Jones. That's 2 R's at the beginning of Ricky Jones. Also, let's see, who else do we have? At Continues, that's my man down in Australia, my brother down in Australia, retweeting at Black BMA Achievement, which is Black Male Achievement, at Miss Carrie Lynn, at Farrah Parker. Bunch of people were chiming in and either retweeting or watching tonight. We appreciate it and don't take it for granted. I am your host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show. I'm Dr. Vibe, saying as always, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. Best way to touch base with me is to go to my website, THEDRVIBESHOW, the Dr. Vibe Show. You can also catch selective shows of what I do at the Good Men Project. Remember, too, I host the Good Men Project show once a month, and I co-produce it with Marie Roker Jones. I also co-host with Marie Roker Jones at her monthly Google Hangout Man You Want to Be. And you can also catch me at selected episodes at the Black Life Coaches Facebook fan page, the #1 resource for Black Life coaches around the world. We like to say, God bless, peace be well, keep the faith. Remember, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. We hope to have Jamaal back on soon when he gets a moment to breathe. And we look forward to having him on and catch us again soon. Good night and bye-bye.
Good night.